The moon hung like a cold silver coin above the Arizona territory, casting ghostly shadows across the barren landscape. 600 yards away, through the lens of his brass spyglass, Colt Harrington's breath caught in his throat. 7 bodies dangled from crude wooden posts, silhouettes swaying gently against the midnight sky. Colt lowered the spyglass, his weathered face hardening into granite. At 42, the former Union lieutenant still carried Gettysburg with him, in the long scar that bisected his left cheek and in the nightmares that never quite faded. He'd come to this desolate stretch of Arizona to escape death, not to find more of it. The land beneath him, 3,000 acres purchased from Frontier Bank last month, was supposed to be his fresh start. A cattle ranch, a quiet life, peace finally. Instead, he found this. A slight movement caught his trained eye. One of the hanging figures, a woman, had lifted her hand toward the sky. "Sweet Jesus," Colt muttered. "They're still alive." He vaulted onto Thunderbolt, his midnight black stallion, and dug his heels in hard. The powerful horse surged forward, eating up the distance in ground-devouring strides. Colt's Winchester 66 bounced against his back, the familiar weight a grim comfort. As he approached, the full horror revealed itself. 7 Apache women strung up by their necks, feet dangling just inches above the ground, not high enough to break their necks in a clean drop, but calculated to ensure a slow, torturous death by strangulation. Colt drew his hunting knife and leapt from Thunderbolt's back while the horse was still in motion. He slashed through the first rope with a single upward stroke. The woman collapsed to the ground with a weak, rattling breath. Her eyes fluttered open for just a moment, dark, filled with pain and confusion. "Hold on," he growled, moving to the next post. The second woman's pulse fluttered weakly beneath his fingertips. The third moaned softly as he cut her down. All 7 miraculously clung to life, though by the thinnest of threads. As Colt cut the last rope, his eyes caught something carved into the wooden post, official-looking lettering that sent ice through his veins. By order of the Western Development Act of 1873. This was no random act of savagery. This was sanctioned. Before he could process the implications, the thunder of approaching hooves shattered the night silence. Riders, at least a dozen coming fast. Colt looked at the 7 women, then at his single horse. Impossible to carry them all at once. Making a split-second decision, he untied the canvas tarp from his saddle and spread it on the ground. Working swiftly, he rolled the semi-conscious women into the makeshift travois, using his rope to lash them securely. "Come on, boy," he whispered to Thunderbolt, securing the travois to the saddle. The stallion snorted but held steady, sensing the urgency in his master's voice. The horse could drag the women to safety, but not with Colt's additional weight. He'd have to buy them time. 14 riders crested the ridge, torches blazing in the darkness. At their head rode a man wearing a silver star, Sheriff Marcus Galloway of Silver Creek, a man Colt had met only once when filing his land deed. "Find those Apache whores and finish the job," Galloway's voice carried across the desert. "Blackwood wants no witnesses." Slapping Thunderbolt's flank, Colt sent the horse galloping toward a canyon to the east, a natural fortress he'd discovered while surveying his property. Then he took cover behind a cluster of boulders, Winchester at the ready. The lead rider suddenly reared as Colt's shot cracked through the air, the man tumbling backward into the dust. Before the others could react, 2 more fell from their saddles. Colt worked the lever action with practiced speed, each shot finding its mark with deadly precision. "It's coming from those rocks," someone shouted. "Sniper, spread out!" Colt continued firing, creating enough chaos to mask Thunderbolt's escape. When the return fire became too heavy, he retreated deeper into the rocks, drawing the posse away from his horse's trail. He led reconnaissance missions behind Confederate lines during the war. This was familiar territory. For 2 hours, Colt played a deadly game of cat and mouse, firing from different positions, creating the illusion of multiple shooters, gradually working his way east toward the canyon. 3 more of Galloway's men fell to his rifle before he finally broke away, using a dry creek bed for cover. By the time Colt reached the hidden canyon, dawn was threatening the eastern horizon. Thunderbolt stood guard at the narrow entrance, the travois empty beside him. Blood darkened the horse's coat. A bullet had grazed his flank during the escape. "Good boy," Colt murmured, running his hand along the wound. "Let's find them." The hidden canyon was 3 miles northeast of the hanging site, accessible only by a narrow path that would be nearly invisible to anyone not looking for it. Inside, a natural spring provided fresh water, and the steep rock walls offered protection from above. Following Thunderbolt's hoof prints, Colt found the women inside a shallow cave on the western edge. They had managed to crawl from the travois and take shelter, clinging to life through sheer determination. His body ached with exhaustion, but there was no time to rest. They needed immediate care. Working methodically, Colt built a small, smokeless fire, boiled water in his tin cup, and tore his spare shirts into bandages. Their bruised necks and raw wrists told a story of brutality that made his blood boil. One by one, he tended to them, cleaning wounds, coaxing water between cracked lips, checking for broken bones. His hands, once steady enough to hit targets at 800 yards, now trembled slightly as they pressed against throats, checking for pulse and breath. The eldest of the women awakened first. She sat up with a gasp, eyes wild with fear until they focused on Colt. She reached for a rock, her intent clear. "Easy," Colt said, raising his palms. "I'm not with them. I cut you down." She paused, studying him with eyes dark as midnight. "Who are you?" Her voice was a rasping whisper, damaged from the rope. "Name's Colt Harrington. This is my land. Or so I thought." He handed her a canteen. "What's your name?" She drank deeply before answering. "Nakia." She gestured to the others, naming them one by one as they lay unconscious. Talise, Kiona, Aponi, Diani, Halona, Istas. Her eyes grew hard. "Why did you save us? What do you want?" "Decent men don't need reasons to cut down women from hanging ropes," Colt replied, his voice like gravel. "Who did this to you?" Nakia's eyes filled with tears, but her voice remained steady. "Men who believe Apache lives are worth nothing compared to gold and progress." As the others began to stir, Nakia told their story. The Apache tribe had lived on Red Mesa for generations. In 1851, they signed a treaty with the federal government recognizing their ancestral rights to the land. They had lived in peace until silver was discovered in the region, and the Southern Pacific Railroad began planning routes through the territory. "Frontier Bank declared our treaty invalid," Nakia explained. "When we protested, they sent men to poison our cattle and burn our homes." "The 7 of you fought back," Colt guessed. Nakia nodded. "We organized our people. We built fences. We sent letters to Washington. We demanded justice." Her eyes hardened. 3 nights ago, they came with guns and torches. They took us, all women, all leaders, to make an example. The sheriff was with them? Sheriff Galloway, Bank Director Blackwood, a man they call Billy, a killer with dead eyes. Billy Caldwell. The name sent a chill down Colt's spine. The notorious gun for hire had killed 23 men across 3 territories. "They strung us up at dawn," Nakia continued, "left us to die slowly, where everyone could see, to show what happens to Apache who dare to speak up." Colt pulled the land deed from his saddlebag and unfolded it on the cave floor. "This says I bought this land legal and proper from Frontier Bank. 3,000 acres, including Red Mesa." Naka's eyes flashed. "Then you are their partner in theft." "No, ma'am." Colt's voice was hard as iron. "Appears I'm their victim, too. This deed ain't worth the paper it's printed on if the bank never owned the land to begin with." From his saddlebag, Colt produced a bottle of whiskey, poured some onto a cloth, and began cleaning a deep gash on Talisa's arm. "Back in '62, outside Richmond, my unit got separated during a Confederate assault. An Apache scout found me, half dead from blood loss. Could have finished me or left me. Instead, he dressed my wounds and led me back to Union lines. Never asked his name, never got to thank him. He looked up at Nakia, his blue eyes bright against his sun-darkened face. Figure this might be my chance to repay that debt. By midday, all 7 women were awake, though weak. They gathered around the small fire as Colt laid out his proposal. Sheriff and his men will be searching for all of us. You need time to heal. I need to find out what's really happening here. He outlined his plan. He would scout the town, gather information, and steal back the records that proved their rightful ownership. The women would remain hidden in the canyon until they regained their strength. And then? Nakia asked. Then we take back what's yours, Colt said simply. One way or another. The night sky was pitch black when Colt approached Silver Creek. No moon meant good cover, but difficult movement. Still, he'd spent years behind enemy lines during the war. This was familiar territory. The sheriff's office sat at the town's main intersection. A 2-story wooden structure with barred windows and a small jail attached to the back. A single deputy dozed in a chair on the porch, shotgun across his lap. Moving like a shadow, Colt circled behind the building. The rear window was locked, but yielded to his knife with a soft click. He slipped inside, landing silently on the wooden floor of what appeared to be the sheriff's private office. Oil lamp turned low. Colt began methodically searching through papers on Galloway's desk. Land records, telegraph messages, wanted posters, nothing useful until he opened the bottom drawer. There, beneath a false bottom, lay a leather-bound ledger filled with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Bribes. Detailed records of every official Galloway and Blackwood had paid off. Colt froze as a floorboard creaked in the outer office. The door handle turned slowly. Drawing his Colt Navy revolver, he pressed himself against the wall beside the door. The deputy entered, yawning, then froze at the sight of the open drawer. Before he could shout, Colt struck, the revolver's handle connecting with the young man's temple. He crumpled without a sound. As Colt secured the unconscious deputy, a large map on the wall caught his eye. It showed the Arizona Territory, with a red line marking a proposed railroad route, straight through Red Mesa. But what made Colt's blood run cold was the additional notation in the corner. Gold deposit confirmed, estimated value 4.5 meters. Proceed with Apache removal immediately. This wasn't just about land or a railroad. It was about millions in gold, hidden beneath Red Mesa's soil. Colt was halfway back to the window when the office door burst open. Sheriff Galloway stood in the doorway, revolver already drawn. "Well now, what have we here?" Galloway sneered. "The Apache lover himself." Colt dropped to one knee as Galloway fired, the bullet splintering the wood where his head had been a moment before. Rolling behind the desk, Colt returned fire, his shot catching Galloway in the shoulder. The sheriff howled in pain but kept firing. Wood splinters and paper flew as bullets tore through the desk. Colt crawled toward the window, grabbed the ledger, and kicked over the oil lamp. Flames erupted instantly, engulfing the curtains and spreading to the papers strewn across the floor. Through the smoke and confusion, Colt dived through the window, glass shattering around him. He hit the ground rolling and sprinted for the alley where Thunderbolt waited. Behind him, shouts and the fire bell filled the night as Silver Creek awakened to chaos. 3 days later, the women had recovered enough strength to move, which was fortunate. The canyon was no longer safe. Word had spread throughout the territory. $500 for Colt Harrington, dead or alive, charged with arson, theft, and the murder of 2 lawmen. "I didn't kill anyone," Colt muttered as Nakia read the wanted poster he'd taken from a traveler's saddlebag. "Truth matters little to men like Blackwood," she replied. "They create their own." They relocated deeper into Apache territory, to a network of caves Talise knew from childhood. There, they began planning their next move. Kiona, the youngest at 19, proved to be a masterful archer and tracker. Talise could read trails 3 days old and move without sound through even the driest brush. A pony, with her strong build and steady hands, was skilled with a knife and tomahawk. Dione possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of local plants and their medicinal properties. Helena was a master of disguise, able to blend into any environment. Istas, though quiet, had worked as a cleaner in Frontier Bank and knew its layout intimately. Each woman possessed skills honed by necessity and heritage, knowledge that would prove invaluable in the days ahead. Colt shared what he discovered about the gold beneath Red Mesa. That's why they are in such a hurry to run you off the land. Southern Pacific wants the railroad through before winter. Blackwood wants the gold. The only thing standing in their way is your tribe and that treaty. The original treaty is in our village elders' keeping, Nakia said, but without witnesses who can verify its authenticity, it means nothing to white courts. Then we need more than just the treaty, Colt said, spreading out a rough map he'd drawn. We need proof of their crimes. Blackwood's ledger shows bribes, but we need witnesses willing to testify. And we need to expose the gold discovery. Once that's public knowledge, too many eyes will be watching for them to get away with murder. Their strategy took shape. Colt would approach Jason Winters, editor of the Silver Creek Chronicle, a man known for his principles. Talise and Kiona would return to their village to retrieve the treaty and rally what support remained among their people. The others would gather evidence and prepare defenses. As Colt prepared to leave for town, Nakia approached him. "The men hunting us, they are killers." "So am I, ma'am," Colt replied, checking his Winchester. "Difference is, I've got a reason to be." The journey to Silver Creek was tense. Colt traveled by night, avoiding roads and patrols. Still, 5 miles outside town, trouble found him. He sensed the ambush seconds before it happened. A subtle shift in the air, the faint clink of a spur. He drove his heels into Thunderbolt's flanks just as the first shot rang out, the bullet whizzing past his ear. 3 riders emerged from the rocks, guns blazing. Colt recognized the lead man instantly, Billy Caldwell, the infamous gun for hire, his twin Colt Navy revolvers gleaming in the moonlight. "Harrington!" Caldwell shouted. "Blackwood wants your head!" Colt didn't waste breath on words. He fired from the saddle, his first shot catching one rider in the chest. The second rider's horse stumbled, throwing its rider, but Caldwell was too good, too fast. His bullet grazed Colt's arm as they thundered past each other. Wheeling Thunderbolt around, Colt charged directly at Caldwell, firing his Winchester from the hip. The distance closed. 50 yards, 30, 10, neither man yielding. At the last possible moment, Thunderbolt swerved on command. As they passed, Colt swung the rifle like a club, catching Caldwell across the face. The impact nearly unseated both men. Blood streaming from a gash above his eye, Caldwell twisted in his saddle, both revolvers tracking Colt's retreat. 6 shots hammered out in rapid succession. 5 missed. The 6th tore through Colt's side, a line of liquid fire that nearly blacked him out. Somehow he stayed mounted, driving Thunderbolt toward the safety of the canyons. Behind him, Caldwell's curses faded into the night. Miles later, Colt's strength finally gave out. He slumped forward, consciousness fading, as Thunderbolt, sensing his rider's distress, turned instinctively toward the hidden caves. Colt awakened to searing pain as Nakia pressed a poultice of herbs against his wound. "Bullet passed through," she said. "You are fortunate." "Doesn't feel like fortune," Colt gasped through gritted teeth. "A man who cannot reach Silver Creek cannot help us," she replied, her tone softening slightly. "Rest. Heal. There is time yet." But time was not on their side. The next morning, Talise returned from scouting with grim news. Diane, who had separated from their group to gather medicines, had been captured by Galloway's men. She was being held in the Silver Creek jail, scheduled to hang at dawn. "They're using her as bait," Colt said, struggling to sit upright despite his wound. "They know we'll try to save her." "Then we don't disappoint them," Kiona said fiercely, checking her bow. Despite Nakia's protest that his wound needed more time, Colt rose to his feet. "I've fought with worse." He outlined a desperate plan, one that relied on precision timing and the element of surprise. That night, as Silver Creek settled into uneasy sleep, Kiona positioned herself on the roof across from the jail, bow ready. She had climbed the water tank ladder on the far side of the building, out of sight of the street patrols, her moccasins making no sound on the wooden rungs. Talise and Halona waited with horses at the edge of town. Nakia, against Colt's wishes, insisted on accompanying him to the jail itself. "Your plan requires someone who knows healing," she said firmly. "Diani may be too weak to ride." The jail was guarded by 4 deputies, all heavily armed, clearly expecting trouble. Colt approached from the rear alley, Nakia close behind him. At his signal, Kiona's first arrow sailed through the night, striking the oil lamp that illuminated the jail's front porch. Darkness fell instantly. The confusion that followed gave Colt the opening he needed. 2 deputies rushed to investigate, leaving the rear door guarded by a single man. Colt's knife found his throat before he could raise the alarm. Inside, they found Diani in the last cell, barely conscious. Her face was bruised, her breathing shallow. "Sheriff's been questioning her about your whereabouts," the lone prisoner in the adjacent cell whispered. "Been at it all day." As Nakia tended to Diani, Colt turned to the prisoner. "What are you in for?" "Claim jumping," the man replied. "Staked a legal claim north of town. Next thing I know, Blackwood's men are saying it's bank property. You want out? Mister, I'd sell my soul." "Your testimony might do." Colt unlocked his cell. "Tell me everything you know about Silas Blackwood." By the time the alarm was raised, they were already racing out of town, Diani secured to Nakia's horse. Behind them, gunfire and shouting faded as darkness swallowed their escape. But their triumph was short-lived. Returning to the caves, they found a pony gravely wounded. A hunting party had discovered their hideout. The others had fled deeper into Apache territory, carrying what supplies they could. "They're closing in," Colt said grimly, studying the tracks left by their pursuers. "We need a new strategy." Their only option now was to seek refuge with the main Apache encampment, a risky move. Many in the tribe blamed the 7 women for bringing down Blackwood's wrath. Others distrusted any white man, even one who had saved their kin. The reception at the hidden Apache village was cold. Armed warriors surrounded them immediately, spears and bows at the ready. The tribal elders, all men, regarded Colt with open suspicion. Chief Nakohe, a tall man with eyes like flint, addressed Nakia in their native tongue. Her replies were respectful but firm. The discussion grew heated. Finally, Nakohe turned to Colt. "Why should we trust a white man? Your kind speaks with forked tongue, makes promises written on wind." Before Colt could answer, a commotion erupted at the edge of the camp. A rider approached, an older Apache man, dignified despite his obvious exhaustion. "Riverwalker returns," someone shouted. The elder dismounted slowly, his gaze finding Colt in the crowd. Something like recognition flickered in his ancient eyes. "I know this man," Riverwalker announced, approaching Colt. "Many winters ago, near the Great War between white men, I found him bleeding in the forest. The Great Spirit told me to save him." Murmurs spread through the gathered tribe. Riverwalker continued. "He was a soldier fighting against those who would keep others in chains. I tended his wounds and led him to safety." Colt stared in disbelief. "You're the scout who saved me outside Richmond." Riverwalker nodded. "The circle completes itself. You saved our daughters. I once saved you." The revelation changed everything. That night around the council fire, they shared what they had learned about the gold beneath Red Mesa and the railroad's plans. Riverwalker produced the original 1851 treaty from a leather pouch, yellowed but intact, bearing the signatures of U.S. officials and Apache leaders. "This means nothing to men like Blackwood," Nakohe said bitterly. "They will burn it and claim it never existed." "Not if we expose them first," Colt replied. He revealed his most shocking discovery yet, gleaned from the prisoner at the jail. Silas Blackwood had been corresponding with a U.S. senator who was heavily invested in Southern Pacific Railroad. Senator Howard Harrington, Colt's father. My father died at Shiloh, Colt said, his voice hollow. Or so I was told. Apparently he survived and has been living very well at the expense of people like you. The revelation stunned the council into silence. Finally, Nakia spoke. What will you do? Colt's face hardened. What needs doing? Blood or no? The plan they formed was audacious, desperate, and their only hope. While the Apache warriors created a diversion north of town, Colt would infiltrate the bank to find proof of the land fraud and gold discovery. Nakia and Talise would take the treaty to Jason Winters at the newspaper. Meanwhile, Kiona would position herself as a sniper on the water tower, providing covering fire when needed. The element of surprise was critical. No one in Silver Creek would expect them to attack directly, least of all in broad daylight. As dawn broke over the dusty streets, Colt adjusted the brim of his hat and checked his revolvers one final time. The wound in his side still ached, but Nakia's medicine had worked wonders. Remember, Nakia said, Blackwood keeps the ledger in his office. The combination to his safe is his daughter's birthday, April 9th. Colt raised an eyebrow. How'd you learn that? Istus worked as a cleaner in the bank before all this. People speak freely around those they consider invisible. The town was quiet when they entered from different directions. Colt from the south, dressed as a cattle buyer. Nakia and Talise from the east, disguised as Mexican traders. Kiona slipping unseen toward the water tower at the north end of town. Kiona's ascent to her sniper position was a testament to her Apache training. Moving in the gray pre-dawn light, she used the shadow of the mercantile building to approach the tower unseen. She scaled the ladder on its western side, the side furthest from the sheriff's office, her moccasined feet making no sound on the metal rungs. At the top, she secured her position behind the tank's rim, where she had a clear view of the entire main street below, yet remained hidden from casual observation. From her deerskin pouch, she removed Colt's spare Winchester, smaller and lighter than his primary rifle, but deadly accurate in skilled hands. Frontier Bank stood at the corner of Main Street and Railroad Avenue, a two-story brick building with pretensions of grandeur. Colt entered casually, nodding to the guard at the door. Inside, business proceeded as usual, clerks counting money, customers waiting in line. Silas Blackwood himself stood behind the teller cage, a tall man with silver hair and cold eyes. Colt approached the teller, requesting to open an account for his cattle business. As the young man fetched the paperwork, Colt surveyed the room, noting exits, guard positions, and the heavy oak door that led to Blackwood's private office. Just as the teller returned, shouting erupted outside. The Apache diversion had begun, warriors on horseback charging down Main Street, firing arrows into the air, creating chaos without actually harming anyone. The bank erupted into panic. Guards rushed outside. Blackwood barked orders, trying to maintain control. In the confusion, Colt vaulted over the counter and slipped through the oak door, locking it behind him. Blackwood's office was opulent, Persian carpets, leather-bound books, a massive desk of polished mahogany. The wall safe was hidden behind a painting of a hunting scene. Working quickly, Colt spun the dial, 4904. The safe door swung open. Inside lay stacks of documents, bags of gold coins, and a leather portfolio labeled Red Mesa Operation. As Colt rifled through the papers, he found exactly what they needed: geological surveys confirming the gold deposit, fraudulent land deeds, and letters to Senator Harrington discussing how to circumvent the treaty. Most damning of all was a detailed plan for removing the Apache problem permanently, a blueprint for what amounted to mass murder, signed by Blackwood, Sheriff Galloway, and countersigned by Senator Harrington. The evidence secured in his saddlebag, Colt moved to leave, and found Silas Blackwood standing in the doorway, shotgun leveled at his chest. "Mr. Harrington," Blackwood said smoothly, "I've been expecting you." "Figured as much," Colt replied. "Man like you doesn't leave his safe unlocked by accident." Blackwood's thin lips curved into a smile. Indeed, though I confess I anticipated this visit after dark, not during business hours. Quite bold. Learn that from the Apache, Colt said. Strike when least expected. Speaking of your red friends, they're being rounded up as we speak. Sheriff Galloway was quite prepared for their little diversion. A cold knot formed in Colt's stomach. The plan was unraveling. As for the newspaper editor, Blackwood continued, he won't be publishing anything, ever again. Billy Caldwell paid him a visit this morning. You're bluffing, Colt growled, though doubt crept into his voice. Am I? While you've been so focused on saving the Apache, you've failed to see the larger picture. This isn't just about gold or land, Mr. Harrington. This is about the future of the West itself. Progress requires sacrifices. Outside, gunfire erupted, no longer the controlled chaos of the diversion, but the deadly sound of true battle. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. It seems your allies are putting up quite a fight. Futile, but admirable. Colt's hand inched toward his revolver. I wouldn't, Blackwood warned. At this range, this shotgun will cut you in half. Maybe, Colt acknowledged, but you'll only get one shot. Better make it count. For a long moment, neither man moved. The gunfire outside intensified. Then with a speed that belied his years, Blackwood fired. But Colt was already moving, diving to the side as the shotgun blast tore through the space where he'd stood. Rolling to his feet, Colt drew and fired in one fluid motion. Blackwood staggered backward, crimson blooming across his white shirt. You've lost everything, Colt said, collecting the fallen shotgun. Have I? Blackwood wheezed, blood bubbling at his lips. You still have to get out of town alive. The main floor of the bank was deserted when Colt emerged from the office. Outside, chaos reigned. Apache warriors clashed with townspeople and lawmen. Bodies littered the street. And at the center of it all stood Sheriff Galloway, using a young Apache woman as a shield, Kiona. Somehow they discovered her position on the water tower. Now she was on her knees in the dusty street, the sheriff's revolver pressed to her temple. Harrington, Galloway bellowed, come out and face justice. Colt stepped onto the bank's porch, Winchester raised. Let her go, Galloway, it's over. I've got the evidence. The land deeds, the gold surveys, your plan to massacre the Apache, all of it. Evidence means nothing if you're dead, Galloway snarled. A tense silence fell over the street. Combatants on both sides paused, watching the standoff. You're surrounded, Harrington, Galloway continued. My men have your Apache friends cornered. Surrender now, and maybe some of them live. Colt's eyes scanned the rooftops, searching for any sign of hope. He found none. Then from the direction of the telegraph office, a new sound emerged, the rhythmic thunder of many horses approaching. All eyes turned as a column of blue-uniformed cavalry appeared, led by an officer whose insignia identified him as a federal marshal. What the hell? Galloway muttered. The marshal reined in his horse at the edge of town. Sheriff Marcus Galloway, he called out. In the name of the United States government, you are ordered to stand down. Confusion rippled through the crowd. Behind the cavalry, a second group appeared. Dozens of Apache warriors led by Riverwalker and Chief Nakia. Galloway's grip on Kiona tightened. This doesn't concern the federal government, Marshal. The illegal seizure of treaty lands, conspiracy to commit murder, and fraud against the United States Treasury are very much federal concerns, the Marshal replied calmly. Release the girl and surrender peacefully. For a moment it seemed Galloway might comply. Then with a snarl of defiance, he raised his revolver to Kiona's head. The crack of a rifle shot split the air. Galloway crumpled, a bullet hole perfectly centered between his eyes. All eyes turned to the roof of the mercantile building, where Nakia stood, Colt's Winchester still smoking in her hands. She had abandoned her mission to the newspaper when she saw Kiona captured, climbing to the rooftop using a stack of supply crates and the store's rain gutter. A desperate gambit that had paid off. In the confusion that followed, Colt rushed to Kiona's side. You all right? She nodded, eyes wide. The newspaper editor, Blackwood said Caldwell got to him. Blackwood lied. Winters is alive. We got the treaty to him. He's printing the story now. Relief flooded through Colt. And the marshal? How did he? River Walker, Keona explained. He rode 3 days without stopping to reach the federal garrison at Fort Bowie. Brought proof of the treaty violations. As the cavalry secured the town, arresting Blackwood's remaining men, the marshal approached Colt. Harrington, I'm Marshal Davis. He extended his hand. Your father sends his regards. Colt stiffened. My father is part of this conspiracy. Was, Davis corrected. Senator Harrington contacted my office 2 weeks ago with information about Blackwood's operation. Said he'd had a change of heart after learning his son had purchased land in the territory. The marshal's eyes softened slightly. He asked me to tell you he's trying to make amends. Colt absorbed this in silence, emotions warring within him. Finally, he handed over the documents from Blackwood's safe. This should help your case against the remaining conspirators. Indeed it will. Davis nodded toward the Apache gathering at the edge of town. The treaty will be honored. Red Mesa returns to its rightful owners. 3 days after the Battle of Silver Creek, Colt found himself face to face with his father for the first time in 13 years. Senator Howard Harrington had arrived with the federal investigators, aged but still carrying the military bearing that Colt remembered from childhood. They stood outside the marshal's temporary headquarters, 2 men bound by blood, but separated by years of silence and betrayal. You look well, son, the senator said at last, his voice rough with emotion. No thanks to you, Colt replied coldly. You left me to believe you died at Shiloh. I did die there, in a way. The older man's eyes clouded with memory. My wounds were severe. By the time I recovered, the war was nearly over. You had enlisted following my footsteps. A bitter smile twisted his lips. I was proud and ashamed. I'd failed as a father, failed as a soldier. So you reinvented yourself as a corrupt politician instead. The barb struck home. Howard flinched but didn't deny it. I've made many mistakes, Colt. What happened here, he gestured toward Red Mesa, is among my worst, but I'm trying to make it right. By turning on your co-conspirators? Convenient timing. I didn't know you were here until Blackwood mentioned a Union veteran named Harrington buying land in the territory. Howard's voice dropped. When I realized it was you, something broke in me. Something that should have broken long ago. Colt studied his father's face, searching for truth. The Apache will lose their land anyway, won't they? The gold's too valuable. Not this time. Howard reached into his coat and withdrew an official-looking document. Federal protection for Red Mesa, signed by the president himself. The Apache retain mineral rights. Any mining operation must be approved by the tribal council, with fair compensation guaranteed. Colt took the document, disbelief warring with hope. Why would the government agree to this? Because I threatened to expose every corrupt land deal in the Western Territories, Howard said simply. I've collected evidence for years. Insurance, I called it. Never thought I'd use it for something good. The admission hung between them, neither full redemption nor empty gesture, but something in between, a beginning, perhaps. I don't expect your forgiveness, son, Howard said finally, but I hope someday you might understand. Colt handed back the document, his expression unreadable. I understand more than you think, old man. We've both got blood on our hands. Difference is, I never pretended mine was clean. As his father turned to go, Colt added, I'll be at Nakia's ceremony tomorrow. You should come. Howard paused, surprise evident in his weathered face. You think they'd allow it? No, Colt said honestly, but showing up anyway would be a start. The ceremony took place at sunset on Red Mesa, where the 7 women had nearly died. Now the wooden posts that had held their nooses had been transformed, carved with symbols of life and renewal, topped with eagle feathers that danced in the evening breeze. The entire Apache tribe gathered in a great circle, with Colt and the 7 women at its center. River Walker, as the oldest and most respected elder, conducted the ritual, his deep voice carrying across the hushed assembly as he recounted the women's courage and Colt's intervention. In the Apache tradition, each woman stepped forward to receive a blessing, a mixture of sacred herbs brushed across her forehead, and a new name symbolizing rebirth. Nakia became Speaks with Thunder. Talise was named Shadow Walker. Kiona received the name Eagle Eye. Each name acknowledged not only their survival, but their strength. When all 7 had been honored, River Walker turned to Colt. "The white man who cuts ropes instead of throats," he said, his voice carrying to all assembled. "Today you are no longer stranger. Today you become brother." Chief Nakohe stepped forward, skepticism still evident in his bearing, but respect now tempering his judgment. He presented Colt with a ceremonial knife, its handle carved from elk bone, its blade of gleaming steel. Not an Apache weapon by origin, but a symbol of the bridge Colt had become between 2 worlds. "This blade cuts ropes, not flesh," Nakohe declared. "Remember this always." As the final blessing was pronounced, Colt noticed a solitary figure standing at the edge of the gathering. Howard Harrington, hat in hand, watching from a respectful distance. Their eyes met briefly across the crowd. No words were exchanged, no gestures of reconciliation. But in that moment, something shifted. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement. Of wrongs done, of amends being made, of the long road still ahead. Later that night, as the celebration continued around the great bonfire, Nakia found Colt sitting alone, staring up at the star-filled sky. "Your father came," she said, settling beside him. "Surprised me too. It takes courage to face those you have wronged." Colt's mouth twisted in a half-smile. "Takes even more to face those who've seen the worst of you and still stand by your side." Nakia's hand found his, rough palm against smooth skin. "The council has reached a decision," she said. "The tribe offers you land at the northern edge of our territory, good grazing land for cattle." "Generous offer," Colt replied, "but I'm not sure I'd make a good neighbor." "You would not be just a neighbor." Nakia's eyes met his. "You would be family." From the celebration below, a child's laughter drifted upward. A young Apache boy, orphaned in the conflict, had taken to following Colt everywhere, fascinated by his weapons and horse. "Little Wolf needs a father," Nakia said softly, "and you need peace. Perhaps you will find it here after all." Colt looked out over the land once more, not as property to be owned, but as a home to be shared. The scar on his face seemed to ache less these days. The nightmares came less frequently. "Might be I will," he said at last. 2 months later, the transformation of Red Mesa was well underway. The tribe had begun carefully controlled mining operations, partnering with a company that Howard Harrington had vetted personally. The profits were funding schools, irrigation systems, and proper housing. On a hilltop overlooking it all stood a simple cabin, Colt's new home, built with the help of Apache hands. Beside it, a corral housed Thunderbolt, and the beginnings of what would someday be a respectable herd. Inside, Colt sat at a rough-hewn table, teaching Little Wolf how to clean a revolver, the boy's dark eyes intent on every movement of Colt's scarred hands. Nakia worked nearby, preparing the evening meal, occasionally casting warm glances their way. It wasn't the life Colt had imagined when he first purchased land in Arizona territory. It was better, harder in some ways, richer in others, but undeniably his. The door burst open, startling them all. Talise stood in the doorway, breathless. "Riders coming. Marshal Davis's men." Colt rose, instinctively checking his gun belt. "Trouble?" "News," Talise replied. "Billy Caldwell was captured trying to cross into Mexico." Relief washed over Colt's features. The final loose end, tied up at last. When Marshal Davis arrived minutes later, however, his expression was grim. "Harrington, wish I brought better news." Caldwell escaped? Worse. He talked, claims he was hired by someone higher up than Blackwood or your father. Someone in Washington who doesn't want the Apache situation resolved so favorably. Colt exchanged glances with Nakia. You believe him? Someone tried to kill your father 3 days ago. Professional job. Senator's under guard now. Davis handed Colt a telegram. He sent this for you. The message was brief. Trust no one. What we uncovered goes deeper than we knew. Keep them safe. As Davis rode away, Little Wolf tugged at Colt's sleeve. Are the bad men coming back? Colt knelt to the boy's level, his weathered face softening. Some might try, but they'll find something they don't expect. What? Colt's eyes met Nakia's across the room, then swept across the land that had become his home. A family that knows how to fight back. The struggle wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be. But this time, when danger came, it wouldn't find victims waiting to be hanged. It would find warriors standing together, and that would make all the difference.